Hello and welcome back to another episode of Wrenches, Gadgets, and Hacks. If you joined us last time, you know that we're on a bit of a vibe coding kick, so we're going to talk some more about that. But before we do, I would be remiss if I didn't introduce my wonderful co-host. I was going to say sidekick, but that's not right. Co-host is the right way to go about it. The Smarties to my Rockets, the VW to my Chevy, the y'all to my A, John Pearson.
How's it going? I'm glad to be here. Sidekick's fine.
Sidekick, except the sidekick that does more than the main kick, the
Gosh.
field goal kick. What I don't know what kind of kick we want to be, but
Yeah,
vibe coding kick. That's the kick that we're on.
there we go. For sure.
So if you didn't listen last week, last time, last episode, shame on you. But we went through the idea of what really is vibe coding, and if you didn't tune in, you can go back and take a look at that. But we decided that it was worth having a couple episodes dedicated to the roller coaster that is vibe coding. So this time we're going to go with the highs that you get that first time that you get into that vibe coding world. We call it the good. Next episode we're going to dive into the flip side when the magic leaves, as we like to say, the bad, and then we'll wrap it all up with the reality. And if you haven't done any vibe coding, gives you a couple weeks to dip your toe in the water and let us know down here in the comments. I'm sure they're down here somewhere what your experiences are, the good, the bad, and the reality of vibe coding. So now that we've kind of done our intro, John, what are your thoughts? I know you've been dipping your toe into that big pool, that big data lake, as the case may be.
For
Um,
sure.
how's it going?
It's going good. It's I shared a GIF on Twitter of, the Win kid, Brent Rambo or whatever that GIF is,
Yep.
and I modified it to where he looks frustrated at a computer. So it kind of devolves to him being frustrated. That's been my vibe coding journey. We're going to talk about the bad more next time, but yeah, I think after our last podcast, I was like, I need to look at some of this and the more time that goes on, the more I'm like, I need an app. And I mentioned in the last one a note-taking app, right? So I started toying around with it this last couple weeks just to try it out. I started out in Google Gemini. That's my first thing that I started playing around in. I actually upgraded my Google One account and got Google Gemini access included or something like that. And really cool how fast you can ask AI to do things and start seeing some results to play with. It's just, I was aware of that before, it's just seeing it though. And you're like, do this instead. I don't like how that looks. I don't like how this looks. It's very neat. It's a neat way to work, actually. So it's been going pretty good so far, I think. I have like an MVP, minimum viable product, I think, of my own note taking thing. So that's been fun. But yeah, we'll see how it keeps going.
Well, that's pretty amazing, and I think the fact that you're able to do that, I think that's one of the things that we're going to find with vibe coding in general, is that it allows you to do that when you're not looking to necessarily create the next big thing and become a bazillionaire because you vibe coded, but there's something that you want that you just can't find somewhere else. So in the past, we would go to the wood shop and build it, or buy some Raspberry Pis and set up some home automation, which I know you're a big fan of, John. But now we take that one step further, and we can do that in the coding realm that maybe we couldn't do before. Something a little more in depth and a little bit of Arduino code on the
Yeah,
back
for
end.
sure. And I think too, like one thing I found interesting is like JavaScript's been on my list of something to get into for a long time. I have a class that I bought that you suggested, and I still haven't taken the class. I still have access. The guy does lifetime access, thankfully. And you might have to remind me what the author is called, but what his name is. But it's been on my list a long time, JavaScript. And JavaScript, so like with vibe coding, I found too with web apps, it's going to probably write it in some kind of JavaScript web framework. So it's been really neat from that point of view too, playing around because it'll show you the code and I start to dissect code and learn from it that way. That's like how I learn. That's how I learned Python as much as I know it. I'm not an expert. That's how I've learned C Sharp as well. So it's a really neat thing is now instead of having like a person that you bug or dissect their code, you can dissect the AI, the vibe coded code to see what it's doing and start to understand, which has been interesting too. Gemini is very Google centric, so it's going to like really route you into using Google services. So like when I was starting to vibe code this thing that I'm working on, it has me using Gemini for the AI, Firebase for the backend, Google hosting for the hosting and things like that. And I'm afraid I'll get into the bad too quick this episode, but I started wanting to deploy it to like an actual URL, and it's like, oh yeah, I could do that for you. Here's how to do it. And it couldn't do it. And it kept on rewriting the app. So it was just, I got into a few endless loops that panicked the heck out of me too. So I was like on a roll on my phone, even just telling it, change this, change this. And it's really exciting because you're seeing feedback so fast. But it eventually got into an endless loop to where Gemini was just like, I'm updating index.html, I'm updating index. And I was like, is it going to stop updating? And like, thankfully, I had saved the chat out, the files, and I started a new chat with those files because that chat got so long, I think, from me just going back and forth, changing colors and fonts. Very excited that it like had too much context. It was kind of crazy.
And it's I think it's left to its own devices. That's what happens. I think the other thing is that we get so excited because it tends to do the big things first, and not necessarily the big things code wise, but boom, all of a sudden I've got the colors and I can change the fonts and all that really cool stuff. And one of the things that, again, we're not going to go into the bad a lot here, but it's not necessarily the AI that's doing the bad, is that we forget the best way to use the AI. And so
Yeah,
we ask 10,000 questions about fonts and we eat up all of our chat time, and then we get stuck in that endless loop, which is definitely frustrating.
yeah. Yeah, I think I had like 10 changes for colors, and it's like these aren't important things. So like that's one of my kind of downfalls, I guess, is like how it looks. I worry a lot about actually. I know a lot of people might not think that, especially like if they've seen things I make like Monocle, to where I make it look kind of dumb on purpose sometimes. But I really, really care about how it functions and how it looks ultimately. Like, yeah, I'll use a meme, I'll use Comic Sans, but the user experience is so important to me always. So it might have Comic Sans as a font, but it's going to work really good, I hope, you know? So that's one thing I've found too. And I've only really played with Gemini a little bit. Grok, so Twitter's AI X Grok, it'll actually write apps for you too and let you test them in the browser. And then most recently Cursor. Cursor's like the one that like took me further. I'd be curious, so like I know you've done a bunch of vibe coding too. Which ones do you use more, Carl?
Yeah, I have a similar direction that I did with you. The one thing that I can say is that I've sort of been dipping my toe in the vibe coding world for a little over a year now, and like this last 9, 10 months, like the way that it's changed and the ability of what you're able to do just in the calendar year of 2025 is mind blowing. And like you say, you now can really feel like you're having a conversation. So you're not being very dry and clinical, but you have a conversation. And if you're using your method of choice, whatever that might be, and you've given it sort of system instructions, basically you say, this is how I like to code, or this is how I like to talk, or I'm a fun loving guy that likes Comic Sans. It sort of understands that, and then it kind of gives that back to you. And again, it's like having a nice conversation, and that makes it easy. And that's part of the good, is that once you get a flow, get into that flow state,
Yeah,
you can do that, and it lets you want to keep going and keep building the app and keep expanding upon it, not just that instant gratification you get the first time that you do it.
for sure. Yeah, it's
But
been interesting.
of course, that doesn't necessarily answer the question of what I've used, and it's kind of a case of what haven't I used. But I definitely started the same way you did with the LLM side. I did a little bit with ChatGPT. Claude is my go-to. That's the one that I like for coding. But I've done stuff in Gemini, and the more recent versions of Gemini, like the 2.5 and up, it's crazy. They have their own dedicated coding platform as well, the Gemini AI coding. But you can also use Jules, which is their AI coding agent. So there's all sorts of things. But once you get in down the road of like AI coding agents, then you're starting getting down the road of what a developer might use to assist them in coding, as opposed to someone that doesn't know how to code, and how they can write code. Those are sort of two different worlds. And I've learned enough to know that I'm definitely not in the developer world, and so I'm gonna stay in my lane and kind of stay out of there. Gronk, I've done a little bit with that as well. Again, there's the Gronk seems to be fast. No matter what you do, it just seems to be really fast. Now, whether that's good or bad depends on which podcast you're listening to, or
Yeah.
which episode of the podcast you're listening to. But my dark horse, especially if you're just learning and you don't want to pay, you'll find when you come back and listen to the reality part that paying is very much a requirement if you want good AI buddy.
Yep.
But so LeChat is what it goes by. It's their version of ChatGPT, but it's really cool. It gives you a lot of free access and functionality, and because it's European based, it's just a different sense and sensibility when you're using it. A lot of the things that we use are North American based, so they have a different. I don't know if bias is the right word, but it's just different. It just acts differently, the way you interact with it, but it's really good at coding as well. So if you're looking to start and you don't want to start opening your wallet real quick, that's definitely one to look at.
There's a lot of ones that have free tiers too. So like when I was messing with Gemini a bit and wanted to start to figure out how to host it, I was on Reddit looking at different ones. So like my goodness, like you can get so lost in all these threads for sure. So there's one called Navi. There's another one that's I also tried Lovable.
Mm-hmm. Yep,
It didn't
lovable.
it didn't like it was nice because it gave me a UI really fast, but like I feel like Lovable made a lot of assumptions for me that I didn't like indicate. So what I did in Gemini too is I like wrote the first portion of the app and then I asked Gemini summarize this as instructions for an LLM to recreate it. Exactly. So it gave me a summary that I was able to paste into other tools for them to recreate it. That way I didn't have to write it. I'm lazy, right? So I was like over in Lovable and I pasted that in and it started to make a bunch of weird assumptions. So I was like, it's a little strange. So yeah, I jumped around quite a bit. I signed up for a lot of services with my Gmail, so I'm getting all kinds of emails now. That's like the downside too, is maybe make a burner Gmail for this is another tip if you're
Uh,
doing a lot of login with Gmail.
well, and there's a ton of that, and there's so many out there. Like you were mentioning, Cursor was one that I've tried. Copilot, the original sort of assistant, right inside of GitHub itself. Lovable, V0 from Vercel. That was the first one that I used that was sort of a dedicated platform. Use it online. I really had good success with that. Windsurf. I always say Windsurfer, but it's just Windsurf. It used to be called Codium. It's pretty cool as well. It's kind of it's a lot like Cursor. They're sort of two two forks of the same spoon, which is really weird to say. Two tines of the same fork is maybe a better way to say that. They're very similar, and there's unlimited options out there to have some option that you tie into your LLM of choice. So I want to use ChatGPT, or I want to use Claude, or I want to use whatever, and it's just the interface that you use.
Yeah,
And that's the other thing. If you're somebody that's just testing, there's lots of ways where you can have, your 5 free creations of images or whatever. Then you go to ChatGPT, and then you go to u.com, which gives you the ability to have those same things, but as ChatGPT. There's lots of ways where you can find information, but
hmm
where that gets into the other podcasts, so the other episodes we're going to talk about, is it's really hard to do anything of substance. More than 2 or 3 prompts, you can't do that. You have to have one spot where you're going to put all of your code. And some of the things that I've vibe coded, I'm up to the one that I just did most recently was something for work, and it was 95 sessions. So that's 95 chats. Each chat's about 45 prompts. So it
yeah,
took a month to get that all in there.
yeah,
So it starts to actually become, something more than a quick half-hour endeavor. So in that case, you need to have an environment that you trust and an environment that you've got some skin in the game with, I guess is the best way to say it.
for sure. Yeah, it's crazy how long could pass, and you're like, oh, this wasn't quite as fast as I thought.
Yep.
Yeah, it's still pretty new for me actually building web apps. First of all, I build websites like all the time for a long time, but yeah, it's really cool to bridge that gap. I'm actually contemplating making a fork of what it's given me and telling it to migrate it to C sharp. So like a Razor framework, I think it's called. Is it Razor? Is that the one that's C Sharp's WebKit?
Uh,
Maui?
in erasure,
I think it's Razor. What's .NET?
it's
.NET
something with
Web
it's
Form?
something with an E, right? Uh,
Blazor, Blazor.
okay.
Yeah, it's a Blazor framework, so it's like the one that's C sharp but for web apps. I don't know how good it is or not. I've never used it, but I know C sharp a little better, so I'm kind of like toying around the idea of like having it rewrite the app with C sharp just to so that way I can understand what it's doing more. I've also I think it's going to be easy next week when we're talking about all the horror stories and the bad. I've read a lot of horror stories on like Twitter and things of people vibe coding and shipping a product and then it's just like their AWS bills are insane and things like that. So like I've really constrained mine to where like I have $5 credit and once I burn through that, that's it. It's just not gonna work. You know what I mean? Like a lot of those kind of things. But at the same time, one of the good things that I've found so far with my minimal use is some of these note-taking apps, so I'm just going to keep referencing the one I'm working on, but they're like $10 to $20 a month. One of the apps that I still really like it and think it looks amazing is My Mind. It's a
Mhm.
note-taking and bookmarking app, but man, it's pretty pricey for as much as I want to use it for. I think it makes sense and it's justified for all it can do. It's like 160 US a year. It does AI, it summarizes web pages, things like that. But I just want notes and I want to chat with my notes, you know? It doesn't offer that, for instance. If I were to host on a not a free service, the note thing I'm working on, it's like $10 a month, maybe, for all the different services I'm using. So even if I just built this app for me and my wife to use, I'm looking at like maybe $10 a month for something that I can customize however I like, you know, which is pretty neat. That's like one really good thing I think. I think vibe coding in a way is like it used to be if you don't have a website, what are you doing? Why don't you have your own website? Now it's almost like I want an app that does this and it's like why don't you have your own app, you know, that does it. That's how I feel like it's going, which is interesting too.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I think that that's true. But I also think that sometimes we ended up, talking to like-minded individuals. We're all in our same little echo chamber. That don't worry, there's still a ton of people out there that have no interest in doing this at all. So,
Yeah.
people that make apps to sell to make money, don't worry, people are still going to be there to buy them. And
Yeah,
even if
yeah.
you code it and have that experience, they're going to say, well, you know what? It's great, but there's this other app that I can buy. I'm not going to make my own Netflix. I'm not going to,
Yeah, yeah,
even though
yeah.
there's 10,000 tutorials on how to make a Netflix clone. Yeah, I'm not going to do that.
For sure.
But I think it's part of that experience in going down that road. And there's definitely cost involved. That's good, bad, and different. That comes to play. But you will learn as you're going through that there's ways to. You mentioned Lovable. A Bolt is another one. Those ones are really easy. They give you the UI real quick, and they're designed so that if you want to be that person that makes that app and goes out there, that you can also buy the hosting and all of that stuff from them. So it's like Wix for websites. So it gives you that ability to do that and get it out there. And like anything else, that's a good place to start. But at some point, you have to migrate to a development team and all of that. It's like anything. If you decide to grow your weekend hobby into something bigger, it becomes something bigger. But there's also a lot of open source opportunities. And so I don't necessarily mean open source, although I do, but I mean the idea like one of the ones that I talk about, there will be a companion blog, spoiler by the way, but one of the ones that I talk about in there is called Kilocode. And it's basically a way that you can do all of these things we talked about with Claude and with ChatGPT with whatever backend you want, but they give you all of the resources for free. And then you bring your API token for whatever system you want, and then you're paying the actual token price. So, you're not paying $20 a month or whatever it is. You pay actual usage. Sometimes that's good, sometimes that's bad. All depends
Yeah.
on, where you're doing in place. And as you get further down the road, you'll find there's other ways you can do that with that DIY mentality. We've had some people that do AWS, and I'm just blanking on the name, but they have their development platform. I want to say Brickstone, that's not right, but it's something like that. It's sort of their back end of like their version of Azure. I know it's really bad to mix those two up, but you can use that as a development background to store all of your LLM data and have it run things in a totally closed environment and pay pennies on the dollar for what you would pay to have ChatGPT or whatever do that in there. So there's definitely ways that you can keep the good vibes going and also be frugal about it going forward. So there is ways to do that. It just takes a little more knowledge and workflow. And I don't think your wasting time or dollars to spend those $20 subscriptions or whatever it might be those first couple months to learn it. Because maybe
Yeah.
it's not your thing after all. Maybe you do the one note taping app or the one, golf handicap track. And you're like, man, that was fun, but I'm gonna go out and
Yeah.
play golf instead of sit behind my computer, so this isn't my thing. Carry on.
What's really interesting too is like you can make that first pass and hand it off to like an actual developer, right? If you really wanted. Amazon Bedrock, that's their
Thank you.
managed service. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, Bedrock lets you deploy LLMs.
Yep.
I was like, I know the name of this because I've used it. I had to look it up. Yeah, I think that's really interesting. I'd be curious any apps out there that are like vibe coded that have users that stayed vibe coded. I mentioned last time the app that I was using, Twos. They're
Mhm.
vibe coding their version 2 of it, their new one. It's like their thing. They have a bunch of YouTube live streams, and I think they're like running with it. I don't have the beta anymore, or the alpha. It's an alpha, not a beta, because it was so new. I don't have it installed anymore because I didn't give enough feedback, so I got kicked out. But I didn't like that one anyway. So I don't know how it's going now, but it seems like they're still working on it though. So it's kind of interesting for sure. I'd be curious if there's any others out there though that have like made the product, deployed it on something like Bolt, and they're running with it, you know?
I know there are a few out there that kind of started that way, and they may have started before the real explosion of what we have today of what we call vibe coding. But one of the big ones that everybody uses that kind of came from that path was, what do they call it? Beehive. So it's kind of like the current darling that replaced MailChimp.
Okay.
So it's that kind of thing, and that's how that got started. It got started as a small coding project that kind of expanded from that environment, went on the product hunt, which is where everybody goes to sort of
Interesting.
get their things done, and then it kind of grows from there. And I used a small little image editing program. It's dirt simple, which is what I want, called Tiny Kiwi, and it was done. It's a one man shop that it was completely vibe coded and set out, and kind of
That's
makes them
cool.
a few bucks of passive income in the background.
Yeah, that's like really interesting to see too. I like that a lot. Like knowing that people have used it to do things like that. The monetization's always interesting to me too. So like the app Twos app, that's like a weird name, but Twos, it's it's free. It's like donationware. Like you pay to get more features added, but you
Mhm.
can also pay $0 and get the features. It's like a kind of an interesting thing. The guys who make it, like they like that's all they do. They like quit their jobs and like this is sustaining them, which is pretty amazing to me because it's not like a paid app. And one of the clever things they do is they use AI. So it's a bookmarking app partly. So if you bookmark like I don't know a product from Amazon, they convert it to an affiliate link on the fly. And it's very clear, like they make that clear when you sign up. So if I'm bookmarking things, they reroute it as an affiliate link. So they're getting paid for those links, which is a really clever way to do things too, because now you're not putting ads in there or anything like
Mhm.
that. But man, just it just blows my mind that like they make a living off of that kind of model. It's pretty neat. It's like I've never heard of anything like that before either. So
That is pretty cool. And if you believe any influencer out there, you can make $1 bajillion with affiliate links. So that
yeah,
must be how they sustain themselves.
for sure.
But yeah, there's definitely ways that you could do it, and I think that's the part that scares me. By no means have I ever created anything that's worthy of monetization, but the idea of actually going through that, and then what happens if something breaks down? What happens if you have to fix stuff?
Yeah,
And it becomes a little bit scary. One of the guys that I work with has dipped his toes into that realm, and he makes little basically chat bots for Discord,
cool.
and it's similar to paying 99 cents for a skin for your phone or
Yeah,
back to where it's not
ringtones.
it's not big money or anything, but it's something you can do and get a little bit of extra money, and one thing leads to another. So you can certainly do it and start small and go where you want to go. Maybe your goal is just to get a couple bucks in the bank to go see a concert or something. You're not
Yeah,
looking to buy that new house, and this could certainly do that. And maybe you get the bug and you really like it, and then it leads you to take courses and learn how to do all that back end, or
for sure.
hire a developer buddy on the side and get it done right.
Yeah. I mean, even if like you make a project that like you really like and somehow you make money to where it pays for the domain name every year. That's pretty cool. That always feels really neat. So like back when I launched my blog, this isn't vibe coding, but when I launched my blog, 60 Second Rabbit at the time, I bought the domain, all that stuff. But then like the buy me a coffee thing, people throw a coffee your way because they appreciated you helping them. That like paid for the website registration and stuff. That was like so cool. That was like the coolest thing ever. Is it's like wow, like this kind of I'm not retiring on that, like I'm not buying like a vacation home, but I'm able to pay my hosting costs and my domain and just keep sharing knowledge with the world. I always thought that was really neat. That kind of hooked me on that model too. And like I said, I think like the whole do you have a website thing, I think it's going to be like have you played with making apps is going to be kind of that next realm of things, which is really neat. Yeah, it's really an interesting thing. And I encourage people out there listening, if they are vibe coding something that they want to open source or share for free, even, I encourage you to put a buy me a coffee link on it if you can. You'll be surprised how many people are like throw a little coffee your way for something you made that helped them too, which is always really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. And that stuff's easy to put in there. And in fact, most stuff that you vibe code that has anything to do with a website, it suggests that, right from the get-go, just as typical things that you would do. It explores the web. It shows you, it doesn't know what you're creating, but it knows that a lot of people have already created something similar, and these are things that they usually request. So that comes up. So John is speaking the truth. And if you're using things, and a lot of these tools that we've talked about allow you to tie directly into like GitHub, for example, for your repo. You can even add that on your repo. And for things that I've done, the few tools that I've done with vibe coding, and I did the reverse of what John's talking about. I'm a JavaScript type of coder, and I did a C# Dynamo. Wow, where did that not come from? The custom
Dynamo
package for
package.
Dynamo, and I did that as C#, and I vibe coded through that to bring it into place. But I have these as repos up on Hub or whatever your bucket of choice is, and I have no delusions that they're going to be anything great. But if somebody wants to pick up that and take it to the next level and become a millionaire off of it, have at her. That's why it's up to that. That's my sort of whole idea of the open source. It doesn't mean free, although these all are, but the idea that someone else can pick up on it and expand from that. And that's something that I learned from you, John, all the things that you have up there and how they go, and you know how you can work and repo and all of that lovely stuff, which is for a different episode. But the
For
idea is
sure.
that vibe coding leads very well to that. So it's that next level of being able to make things and share them with the world, and to make everyone's life a little bit better, not just how to track my golf score.
Yeah, for sure. One of the hard things, like open sourcing, it's really great too. Sometimes you're on the hook for it though, which is hard too. Someone's like, it shouldn't be called this. This app shouldn't be called. And that's always a fun conversation too. And like in the case of like vibe coding, a lot of this code's just generated by AI. I kind of couldn't imagine if someone were like, the app really should do this, and I'd be like, let me tell Cursor to fix it then. You know what I mean? Another one I have in mind is we have an app that we use from someone. I want to make a better version of their app. It like tracks workouts and shows you stuff like that. I want to make a more succinct version of their app that still uses the same plans and everything. So I'm going to see if I can do that in the future as well. We'll see how that goes, but yeah, it's an interesting thing, I think.
And that's a good way to look at it, to bring it in place. And that's the other thing that I do, is I make it abundantly clear that, you know, like Dynafetch, which was the custom Dynamo package, that came from DynaWeb. It was a package that I used. It was great. It doesn't work with the new version, so I made a version of it. I didn't copy it. I didn't repurpose it, but that was the idea. I make sure to give credit. And the same thing with all of the stuff that I put out there. I make it blatantly clear that, this image was created by AI, this blog post was with AI, so nobody has any delusions that I'm the one that did it, or it came from AI. So yes, there may be some issues, and we'll talk about those in length in the next one. But there's nothing wrong with letting people know you use the tool. And if you get it out
Sure.
there in front, you're going to save yourself the hassle of people trying to sleuth you on the back end that, hey, you didn't do this. It was the AI. Yeah, of course it was.
For sure. And I think that's like another thing it has reminded me. I think if people listening, if you are testing out vibe coding and trying to make something with whatever tool you choose, share what you're doing if you can. Like I'm always all about sharing, right? So even if you're not making something that's free and for people to use or something, I still use Twitter a lot. I still follow a lot of developers on there. I know a lot of people might not. But the build in public like movement is really cool. It's cool seeing what people make in that way. So a lot of people share GIFs of stuff in action and things like that as they're working on it. And like I follow a few developers who are building like screen recording apps and things like that. And some of it's vibe coded, some of it's not. But they like share what they're doing and it's cool to see the iteration. So I encourage people to do that too if they start doing this as first pass of my app that does ABC, updated the visuals. I should have done more of that while I was playing with this myself, so I'm guilty of not doing it. But yeah, it's one of those things. The other part that worries me, I guess, is like the app I'm working on, like vibe coding, is it's live and like it actually uses things that I have like billing on for. So if I were to be too open with all of it, like signups are locked, like I have to invite you to it. But like it being something that's just being generated for me, I'm like kind of like I don't know all the implications of if like 1,000 people went and signed up and bombed the site tomorrow. Like it's just an interesting thing that I need to read up on more. So yeah, maybe I could share more of it without like the actual URL showing or something.
And that's absolutely it. And I think that that's a good way to sort of bring this episode down, is that it's really easy to get started. Anyone can get started with vibe code. You can get that high really quick of something good and something in there, and then that leads to all these things we're talking about. But sometimes, because it can happen so quick, before you know it, you're out there, and all of a sudden, oh, we're I've got people buying this site. I can't do it. You can go down the road of the bad as quickly as you can go down the road of the good.
Absolutely.
And with that, before we bring the plane in for its final landing, any final thoughts, John?
I mean, for the good, I think it's just really fun. I think it's cool getting feedback really quickly and being able to just kind of go back and forth. I encourage people to check it out for sure. And I think it's really interesting where we are and where we are continuing to go for these kind of interactions. And it just makes me think about some of the stuff I work on my personal time and at work, these user interactions and how to make them better. So pretty cool stuff. I encourage people to check it out. And on the next one, the next episode, I also encourage people to not get too discouraged when we bring up a lot of the bad stuff too.
Correct. Remember, there's an episode after that where we bring it all together with lessons learned and all the good stuff.
For
And
sure.
before we officially land, I did some digging, and it's Traverse Lee Media,
Cool.
modern JavaScript from the beginning 2.0 from Brad. Great teacher, great content. Definitely worth checking out if you want to learn a little bit about what you're vibe coding about.
Awesome. Thanks for looking that up too. I need to bookmark it so I remember to take the course now.
I'm the same way. I have the exact same course. I did the first version as well. The second one, some updates, some modern stuff. It's definitely worth checking out. And that's the first teaser for the bad and for the reality, is knowing a little bit about what you're doing makes your life a lot easier. You don't have to be an expert in fitness tracking apps, but sort of knowing what the end in mind is will make your journey a little easier. And John used to say this all the time about working with Dynamo graphs. You know how to do it in Revit, and because you know how to do it in Revit, you may not know how to write the graph, but you know the expected outcome, and that makes your life a lot easier.
For sure.
All right. I've talked about bringing this plane in 3 or 4 times. Let's actually bring it in right now. So I want to thank you for joining us for another episodes of Wrenches, Gadgets, and Hacks, where we explore the tools, the technologies, and the time-saving hacks, or vibe coding hacks, that are shaping the future. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe. There's a button down here somewhere. And stay tuned for more insights in the exciting world of AECO and technology. Until next time, keep building, innovating, and exploring the possibilities.